what we're going to do is today we are going to, first off, we're going to do a Tableau conference-ish recap. Earlier this month, back a couple weeks ago, Tableau had their first virtual, all free conference with a lot of really great content. So we're going to go a little round robin around the table with all the panelists here to kind of talk about some of the biggest takeaways, features that we're looking forward to, sessions that you should check out, all that kind of stuff. So if you missed it, we'll give you the rundown of what you missed. And then we're really excited to be welcoming Zach Geis from JP Morgan Chase, who runs their analytics COE. He's gonna walk through some steps for managing and administering a Tableau server. So if there are folks out there who are maybe new to Tableau server, or maybe they're a developer, an analytics developer, and want to learn more about what goes on behind the scenes and what are some of the ways that you can keep your Tableau admin happy, this is going to be the session for you. And then after that, I'm going to be giving a quick presentation about Tableau performance. So we've probably all dealt with a workbook that has been slow from time to time. So what I'm going to do is just briefly cover some of the highlights of what you can do to try and keep your workbooks performing as fast and as efficiently as possible. So, all right, so Tableau conference recap. I will basically just you can use the chat feature for this too. So if you had anything that you really enjoyed from Tableau conference that you definitely want others to check out, definitely drop those in the chat so everybody can see those. And but I'll hand it off to the panel to give us your key takeaways. We'll start with Zach, since he's our guest of honor. So Zach, Data 20,
yes.
What'd you like?
I thought it was great. So especially for it being a virtual conference, I was really pleasantly surprised by the quality, and just there was a lot of work that went into it. So it was really great. So a couple of things that I put down here. So the biggest highlight for me was the brain dates. I actually participated in over 20 of them, and they were really great. The technology where you could just go on the site, basically find the things that were interesting, find the people that you wanted to talk to, and just pick a time, settle on the time, and then get on the same site and talk to people was really great. It worked really smoothly. Really liked that a lot.
Yeah.
That was really good. That was probably my favorite part of it. As far as a feature, so I'll be honest, I'm not a big Tableau prep guy. I really like Alteryx. I use Alteryx a lot. I really like that Tableau prep is coming out in the browser. I think that's one of the biggest things that I don't really like about prep too much, is that it's such a resource intensive application. There's a lot of issues with it on the desktop. There's issues with drivers and things like that. So making it a little bit more seamless, getting it out there on the server, and actually getting it out on the web where you can do those kind of flows and build that yourself, I think that's really good. And I'm excited to see that come out. As far as a session, I'll use that as my last one. I would probably pick my own session. So just a little plug. I did a session with a couple different folks, somebody from Home Depot and a couple of different evangelists from Tableau, including the author of the Tableau Blueprint, which I'll go over my session a little bit, just about Tableau governance. So it was just kind of an open session where we talked about our findings, talked about how it worked in our companies. So if you're interested in the topic of Tableau and governance and data governance and how it should work together, feel free to look it up, and you'll find it out there on the Tableau conference website.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I also had brain dates on my list. Brain dates are, and you probably, if you've never been to Tableau, first of all, hopefully this was only a primer to the actual experience. And as you go year after year, it's really about the relationships and the networking that you really start to look forward to and take away. And so having that virtual brain dates platform was really key in kind of making that network, that face-to-face time really worth it. So yeah. Cool. All right. Jay, what do you think?
So yeah, I thought as far as functionality goes, I know they did a lot of like maps and spatial releases, which I don't, in my work, I don't really use that much. But some of my clients do a lot of notifications, and they do use Slack. So the Slack notifications was a really big one that I know we're probably gonna implement with some of my clients, and they don't have to go check the dashboard anymore. The emails too, emails just get kind of lost as well. But they can just get an instant notification in Slack, click on it, and go straight there. So that was really cool from a functionality standpoint. I thought the best speaker, just as far as sessions go, is Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm sure most everyone watched him, but he's just really engaging. And that's what I really look forward to with Tableau conferences. Like the keynotes are always just awesome, and they pick the best speakers, and you don't want to miss that kind of stuff, right? And then he related it to data. So I really look forward to those. Just seeing different people from different industries talk about data is always really good for me.
Yep.
And then just Iron Viz, of course, like it just continues to amaze me. Like there's two parts to that, right? There's like, of course they get time to prep. So there's like the storytelling and the creativity that goes into it. And there's a lot, like it's very unique. Each person's was amazing, and it's just very well thought out. And then you have to execute that in 20 minutes. So that's like knowing the product inside and out, and like trying to cut corners everywhere you can, and like optimize and just practice, right? So there's so much commitment that goes into that. It's just awesome to watch, and just, it's really cool. So those are my three things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Iron Viz is amazing. One thing that I really enjoyed about this year is it was the first time that we could see all three of them building at the same time. Like if you've ever seen the live version, you only get like little snippets of what's happening on everybody's desktop, but with the virtual format, they had all three up at the same time, which is really cool. And there's also there's going to be subsequent webinars through Tableau coming up where they're going to actually go through the full build of each designer and talk about some of those tips and tricks and cutting corners that you talked about. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. So yeah, that was Iron Viz is amazing. Every year when the feeder contests come up, I always think, yeah, I should enter that. And I was like, well, wait, am I ready for what happens if I win? So that's always a stress-inducing moment for me. But cool, yeah. All right, Aaron, what do you think? Tableau conference.
Well, I think that honestly, the most exciting thing initially is that it's free. I mean, Tableau, TC is a wonderful immersive thing, but it's quite a production, and it makes it expensive to go. And I think it's really fantastic. COVID has thrown so many curveballs to everyone, but to figure out how to find what is the opportunity here that we usually don't have, which is to open this up to everyone, I think is a really generous, exciting thing. So I love that it's free, love that stuff's still available. If you haven't checked out the Viz Gallery, do it, especially if you happen to have spent some of your quarantine time in Animal Crossing making your own museum. There's some really cool things they've done with creating. I mean, really feels like you're walking into a Tableau museum, which was really exciting. And then to be able to walk up and you click on, the visualization, it expands, and then you get to see the commentary right there as well, which, usually isn't part of a museum experience. You're not talking to the person next to you, like, what do you think about this painting? So it's neat to see who's been there before and what their thoughts are about the visualization. And then in terms of a favorite session, if you're interested in something that's not just tool specific to Tableau or even data visualization specific, but even more broadly, there was a great session by Ben Jones about data literacy and really the data literacy gap. He draws some really excellent parallels about where we've been before in history with new technology and how we actually had to kind of get proactive and learn how to use it. So people used to, get their certifications in Word and Excel, and we had to learn how to use the internet. That was a thing that happened. So talking about where we are today and trying to understand how do we interact with enormous amounts of data, and how do we make organizations that are truly data literate and invest in that. I thought that was a really, really great session. So check it out. It's all still there. If you were busy the week of, don't sweat it. Go check out the resources that are there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And also definitely check out Ben Jones' book, Beyond Avoiding Data Pitfalls. So Ben Jones has a book about kind of an introduction to data literacy, avoiding data pitfalls. It's great. I've got it on my bookshelf with dog-eared corners. So it's a really great resource. So definitely check that out. All right, Lucas, take us home.
All right. So on my side, I think you guys covered quite a bit already, but I really enjoyed the collections concept that Tableau is planning on rolling out, where if you haven't seen, you'll be able to combine a lot of the elements on the server together, almost in kind of one panel. So you'll have metrics, dashboards, ask data, different folders. So it kind of gives you an overall picture or tells more to that story than just a single dashboard. So I thought that was pretty cool of what's coming ahead. Map layers. Jay kind of spoke a little bit about that on the spatial side, but especially for me working in telecom, we've hit this limitation when we try to display multiple things on a map, and we can only do two layers at the most. So that's going to be huge. Sometimes we get away with using other applications like ArcGIS, for example, but that's kind of Tableau's attempt in getting up to speed on that side of things. The third one is kind of a little bit, it's regarding custom extract schedules. It depends on the hat that you wear. If you're an admin, you probably hate that. Sean and I were talking about that earlier today. If you're a user, that's probably a really good thing, because now you're not confined to just specific schedules. You have a lot more flexibility on what you can do. So I think there's a lot of pros and maybe some head scratches with that one as well, but it's nice to see it at least as an option. As far as sessions go, I always like watching the speed tipping, those very quick 30-minute sessions that they try to go over a lot. Just tips in general. I think no matter what level you are with the tool, if you're a beginner or if you're advanced, I'm pretty sure there's at least one or a couple tricks that you'll see there that you probably didn't know about. Actually saw it a couple times, and there's some pretty good stuff in there. They've made it available on YouTube as well, so you can always find it there. And just to piggyback on Sean's comment about how the Iron Viz dashboards were built, I think the Tucson user group I think I was watching that yesterday, October 21st. Christian, the winner, he actually went over his dashboard creation, and especially the mapping and the sigmoid curves. So some nice content and interesting stuff to see there as well. So that's it for me.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. Speaking of spatial, I feel your sentiment. We feel it here too at Cerner, with especially in a lot of industries. I'm sure map layers are going to be a really big thing. I was really excited when they announced it. They said map layers, and everyone went, "Yay!" And then I immediately was like, "Okay, well, how can I start interacting with that? Can I?" So now it's like I'm always looking for I'm always thinking of the next thing. So hopefully they're going to create some sort of UI, or maybe involve some interactivity to allow the user to be able to switch on and off the map layers as they're in their analysis. So so definitely check that out. So my other two, so I mentioned brain dates that I liked. Session, definitely go check out Set It Up, when to use set versus parameter actions. Claire in the chat mentioned that she liked that session. I really liked it too. Set actions and parameter actions. We all kind of know what filter actions are, because it's just ingrained in us as Tableau users, but set actions, parameter actions, they do very similar things. But now I think this session was really, really great to kind of understand the differences and similarities between the two. So definitely just go check that out. And to put my I don't want to say cherry on top, but I think one of my key highlights and takeaways was Wade Davis. As far as speakers go, Wade Davis and his both his talk and his fireside chat with Tableau Zen Master Chantilly, talking about diversity and inclusion as it relates to data in organizations, I thought was really, really impactful. And definitely, it's definitely one that's going to make you think. And so, for better or worse, go do that, which is a really good thing. So go check it out. If you missed it, just go to tc20.tableau.com, put in your you've probably already registered because it's the same email and password that you use to jump onto the forums. So just sign in there. They've got 309 videos in total, and that includes all the keynotes, all the sessions, Iron Viz, everything. And another thing that I really liked, I felt like they did the best job of it this year, was really highlighting those separate industry tracks. So there were 4 main ones that they have specific talks related to: financial services, healthcare and life sciences, public sector, and retail and enterprise. So if you're in one of those 4 industries, within the video catalog, you can immediately filter by one of those and immediately jump into content that is directly related to what you do, which is really cool. So go check that out. All right. It is my great honor to introduce Zach Geis, who works at JP Morgan. I messed up. He's not a server admin. He runs the analytics COE at JP Morgan. He is a data dev ambassador, which is one of the new branches of the ambassador program, which does a lot with APIs. Think about, like hardcore dev work and how that integrates with Tableau. You can follow him on Twitter at ZachsViz. I've gotten to know Zach over the past couple of years through Tableau Conference. It's one of those things that I mentioned earlier in my talk about. Definitely want to go check those out, check him out, and I'm excited to hear what he's got to say. So, Zach, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the invite. Thanks to the whole team, Aaron, Jay, Lucas. Appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you guys. So I'm going to steal the screen share from you. Kick you off of there. We don't want to see any of your stuff anymore. All right, so awesome. So, thanks again. So one of the things I'll say before I forget is over here on my right screen, I went ahead and put the questions and the chat both up here. I'm going to get bored of me presenting up here the whole time. You'll get bored of me presenting the whole time. So let's keep it free form. If you got questions, pop them over here. Even if they're not completely related to the topic, that's fine. I like to keep it. We don't want to just sit here in PowerPoint the whole time. So my talk here is called Tableau Server 101. So really, I'm just going to go through kind of real quick all of the things that I thought and I've kind of brain dumped about Tableau Server. A lot of it, you probably know, is going to go from really beginner concepts to more advanced concepts, and I'll talk about them. And if there's something specific that you, like I said, you want to talk about a little bit more, you have questions about, type them over there. I'll be watching over here just to see if you have any questions along the way. So awesome. So Sean did a good job introducing me, except for my job title, probably the most important thing. So that's fine though, Sean. So I do lead the Tableau Center of Excellence. I don't do a lot of server administration directly anymore. Mostly I'm working with just pretty much everything Tableau at JP Morgan Chase. So I lead a team that's all about enabling Tableau, enabling the success of the product, We do a lot of the server administration, but we also do training, automation, events, coordination, planning, packaging of the software, upgrades, pretty much anything that has to do with Tableau. My team's going to be involved in that. Some information there about me, so you can follow me. Feel free to shoot me an email. My email is right there. I am a certified professional with desktop and a certified associate with server. And as Sean mentioned, I just was recently selected as a Tableau ambassador. So really cool and exciting to have that honor. I'd like to show this just because I don't feel like you have to wear one hat. I think that's all. That's a lot of times people kind of think that like you're either a designer, a creator, an author in Tableau Desktop, or you're a server guy, or server gal, whoever actually doing the development on the server and engineering and building it up and setting it up and whatever it may be. But I like to think of myself as twofold. And the reason I say that is even if you see yourself as a designer and somebody that doesn't really care or doesn't know a lot about the server side or the automation or the coding, you can go and expand into different directions. There's a lot of ways that you can integrate dashboard delivery into automation or into the JavaScript API and embed in the application. So there's definitely an opportunity to go outside of your comfort zone and become a bit of a master of trade in both sides of the coin. So again, we'll start really simple. So what is Tableau Server? Tableau Server, if you're not familiar with it, is typically where you're going to share your content. You're going to share your dashboards and your workbooks and your data sources. You're going to give permission out to users so that they can see what the content. They're going to subscribe to things and alert themselves, whatever it may be. You get a URL for your server, but you also get URLs for the various components, whether it be the sites or the workbooks or different things like that. And there's a lot of extra options, which we're going to go into as I move along. Another good thing is that before I get through here is you might hear me throw around keywords or points about Tableau Blueprint. So Tableau Blueprint is something that recently came out, about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, where Tableau built up a whole kind of curriculum of how you should use Tableau. And it's pretty much everything, especially if you use this in a big company or even a little company, it's the strategy. It's how do you support a server? How do you monitor a server? How do you maintain? It really moves into all these different branches of not only like throwing Tableau together and giving it to users, but doing it in a refined format so that you're tracking and understanding exactly how it should and is used. So, keep that in mind as I go through it. That's kind of what I'm referring to. It's as simple as just going to the Tableau website, just searching Tableau Blueprint. Really great treasure trove of information. So it's also important to note that, if you haven't seen this before, there are a lot of people that I've talked to that really have just never used Tableau Server. They use Tableau Desktop. They share the workbooks. They share the files. I like to start off with how do you even publish. So it's pretty simple. I've opened the Superstore workbook, which we all know. We open this up, and I'm just going to go simply up to Server, and I'm going to hit Publish Workbook. So this is going to pop open a dialog box for me. If you aren't signed in, it's first going to ask you to sign into your server, whether that's Tableau Server or Tableau Online or even Tableau Public. I'll kind of talk through the differences of those shortly, but it's going to pop up this dialog. I'm not going to go through too much here. I'm just going to, look at what we've got here. We've got the project that I'm going to publish to. We'll talk through what that means, the name, and a couple other things. I'm going to go ahead and hit publish. I've got something in there already. That's okay. I'm fine with overriding it. And give that just a moment. So while that's coming up, I am actually publishing to my Tableau Online portfolio. So this is not the same as Tableau Public. And along the way, one of the big things that I'll hit at is the ability to get your own area where you can publish to just like this. It's a really great place to just sample what's going on, see new features, to do demonstrations just like this, just to show and work with Tableau Server even more. Even if you don't have experience or have Tableau Server on your own, I'll talk through how you can get your own space here for free just so you can play around and do things like this. So again, I've published this up. It comes up, and now I've got the same workbook on Tableau Server. It has its own specific URL so that I can get to that, and I'm good to go. So we'll flip back over here to the PowerPoint. So I mentioned a little bit about the different types of Tableau Server. So a lot of times you're going to work with on-premise server. That's specifically, what I use at work is we host the server ourselves. We have machines or virtualized machines that are sitting there inside of our company, inside of a data center, housing Tableau server as a platform. And that's fine. That works just really well if you have the resources and the people to host and manage that infrastructure. If you don't, however, maybe you like Tableau, you really like what you're doing and you want to share it with people, but you don't know the first thing about server and you don't want to learn all those things, you also have Tableau Online. Tableau Online is what I just showed you, where it's hosted actually by Tableau. They maintain the server for you. They make sure that your access is set up. You use what's called a bridge client to publish certain data sources and things like that. But for the most part, it's a pretty similar experience for on-premises. It's just you don't have to worry about the maintenance and the infrastructure and the ownership of everything that goes with that. The two other things to keep in mind is Tableau Public. You've probably seen this if you've been on presentations. I'm sure Sean's mentioned this before, and others on your presentations have heard this. Tableau Public is pretty much a free version that is widely and openly available for anybody in the vein of Tableau Online. So that's where if you go to public.tableau.com, you can see people's online portfolios and see the work that they published out. And also you can publish to the cloud. So you can, with AWS, with Azure, with other options like that, you can take Tableau, put it on the cloud and host it there, which can be cost effective. It can be somewhat elastic, so it can stretch in certain ways based on demand and other things like that that are really good about cloud, all the other things you would hear. Now this slide, I'm going to just quickly go over because actually Tableau has moved away from core. User-based, subscription-based is about the only thing you can do now, where you're paying for a set of users, whether it's 100 or 10,000 or 100,000. That's kind of what you're paying for, and you get the servers on your own dime to kind of match whatever needs you have. Used to be that you could do core. This was recently just announced that they're completely removing this option where you would just pay for the servers and not the users themselves. So server objects. As I go through the presentation, you'll hear me talk through all this lingo. And again, we're moving a little bit more difficult. So it's still kind of in the very early stages of this presentation where it's very simple. But when you look at Tableau Server, you do have a certain set of objects that you're going to be working with. You have the workbooks. A workbook is just like a Tableau workbook file on your local machine. You have a site, which is kind of like a walled in section of your server. So if you wanted to take a server and slice it into 3 compartments where you can never overlap across those 3 compartments and you don't want to share, sites are the way to go. Whereas a project is a little less informal. Project is more like a folder that you can have within a site or within a server, and you can share across projects. It's not quite as rigid as a site would be. A schedule allows you to schedule certain tasks and certain things like data source refreshes or subscription schedules, alert schedules, things like that. So you can put them on a set schedule. Data sources are, of course, the connection to the data itself, whether that's an extract in the file itself or a connection to an actual live data source. Tasks are the individual things that are happening on the server. So if something is refreshing, an alert is triggered, a subscription is sent. Users and groups, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to have a user, which is any one of you that would use a Tableau server environment, or a group of people, which comes with their own set of kind of permissions and things like that. The toolbar is a really nice feature of Tableau server. One of the things that kind of breaks it away from the typical use case of Tableau workbooks and Tableau desktop. You have a lot of things here that you can do. So left side, not anything outstanding here. You've got the undo redo, which allows you to interact and change and go back and forth with the things that you do. Revert to the initial state, refresh the data, pause the data or pause the filters themselves if you don't want things to happen as you click them. But the right side is where it's a little bit more interesting. So the right side, I can set a custom view. So let's say, I'm in Columbus. So I'll click Ohio. And, if I wanted to now go here and just say, I want to call this my Ohio view and save it. I actually can now start over, come into this dashboard fresh, and it's going to kind of reset for me. And maybe now I'm interested, and that's not a good example because it didn't refresh for me, but I can go in here now and say, I want to go to my Ohio view, and I can click in here, go to my Ohio view, and it's going to go ahead and filter into that. Now, that's not a great example. The good example for this is maybe you have 3 or 4 different filters that you're always changing all the time, and you have maybe 3 different slices of your data that you want to see often or frequent as a user, you can then save them as 3 different things and open right into them. Or even say one is your default view so that every time you open the dashboard, you get your view as opposed to what other people see. Alerts enable you to send you an alert based on a specific threshold being met. So these specifically work on an axis. So if I go down here to an axis for furniture and I say create a alert, it's actually going to come up and say, okay, you're creating an alert on furniture. So I want to, as a user, have this send an email to me if this ever crosses 3,000. Send me it, it's going to be the subject, and you can even send it to other people. So every time that this is checked, which is set right here, daily at most, or maybe more frequently, as frequently as possible, hourly at most, it's going to check that and send me an email if the condition is met. So if something is above or below a certain amount, that's really important to you. You can, without having to go back and check that number, have Tableau just tell you when that condition is met. Metrics are somewhat new. So metrics allow you to actually drag some data, select data that you're interested in, and you can create a actual metric on top of it. So this just tells me that, me as a user, I am really interested in this specific data, the furniture sales for this specific item. So it's going to come up and say, is it profitable? Is it furniture? And I can go in and check this specific metric at any point. I can see this on my mobile device. I can see it on my home page. Anytime that I'm really interested in this specific value and what's happening with it, I can check that. Subscription, pretty self-explanatory. I can subscribe to the data, the dashboard per se. I can subscribe to the dashboard, have it send me a PDF, and have it send me an email, a certain time, certain day. Here's where you can see the thing that we were mentioning earlier. I think Lucas mentioned it, where you can set a custom schedule. Yay. Now, I say that sarcastically because as a server admin, that's your worst nightmare. That people can do whatever they want on the server because you can't plan for it. But here I'm online, so I can go in here and say, oh, I want something at 15:50 on Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Or maybe I want to do it every 2 hours. There's different options in here, and that's something that is very new. It's pretty much just the last week or so that came out on Tableau Online. It will be coming to a server near you. You can edit if you do have the responsibility and privileges, permissions to do that. You can share this if you want to give other people, the URL. You can download different things like the data or the PDF or the workbook or the PowerPoint was mentioned. There is a whole area where you can add comments and see this in a full screen. So there's a lot of things that it's not just viewing a workbook or viewing the data. There's a lot of ways you can interact with it when it comes to Tableau Server that isn't available elsewhere. So the roles is kind of getting a little bit more tricky. So roles can be a bit confusing when you get started with Tableau. But I'm trying to explain how these work, especially with the licensing, because licensing along with the roles can be confusing. So starting off, there's 3 different license types that are available. There's a creator, an explorer, and a viewer license. So creator license allows you by default to create things. This is the person that's using Tableau Desktop and or Tableau Prep to author and create things for others to use. A viewer, I'll skip to the right side. A viewer is a typical end user that just wants to see dashboards, interact with them, do the things that I just showed you, and see them as an end user. Explorer is something kind of in the middle there. So an explorer allows you to not only do the things that a viewer can and actually view the content and that kind of stuff. You can do more things like explore, so like create things on the web authoring. So it's something that you can't do as a viewer. You can actually download data, which is removed from the viewer license. Aside from that, there's not too much between viewer and explorer, aside from kind of creating and authoring on the web. And then within these 3 different types of license types, you do have the different levels of user access. Server admin, of course, has access to pretty much do everything. They can create things, they can create sites, they can change settings, they can do all that kind of stuff. A site admin, like I said, sites are kind of breaks within a server. They can do that at a site level. So they can see the status of things and change things within the site, but they can't go outside of their site. And a creator, again, is just kind of an end user where you can build things. You don't have any super rights like a admin would, but you can create things, deploy them, things like that. And that's kind of repeated over in the Explorer side, where there are options for site explorers to either publish or not publish, and have more abilities in the Explorer side and fewer against traditional. I do have a question. Thank you for asking a question. So is Tableau Reader gone then? So Tableau Reader cannot access server, but it was free and had to read only Twibix files. Tableau Reader, it's been a while since I looked at Tableau Reader. Tableau Reader actually used to be the bane of my existence. So when I first started with Tableau, I didn't have a server and I had over 1,000 users. So I actually had to take Tableau Reader and get that out to 1,000 people. So if anybody's not familiar, Tableau Reader is a kind of a read-only extension for Tableau, just like Excel Reader, if you've ever used that, where you can read things, you can view the dashboard, but you cannot actually build or create or interact. It also can void certain license agreements, other things like that. It says that Sean would like to answer this question live. Is that you saying that you want to answer it, Sean?
No, that was just me clicking that you would.
Okay, all right. Okay, so yeah, basically, so I'll go kind of to the answer, which is I actually don't know for sure. I don't think Reader's around anymore. I know it was on its way out. If it is still out there, it's probably pretty hard to find because Tableau, of course, wants you to go to the server route. I would say there's a lot of pitfalls with Reader too. There's no security, there's no extra features. If somebody has Tableau desktop, they can kind of subvert your access and your security and anything like that. So there's a lot of things that are not good about Reader. I'm not sure if it's still out there. If it is, it's probably going away soon. Another question over here, elaborate more on what he said about Tableau core licenses. Yeah, so Tableau officially, if you go back and search their blog post of, I want to say it was just last month, which not too long before the conference, they came out and officially said that anybody that is still on core is officially being moved over to user-based subscription licensing. So that does mean that there is no unlimited access. That is one of the big advantages, and you're kind of hitting on it, Dan. So one of the big advantages of core used to be that since you're only paying for the machines, and Tableau doesn't care about how many users you have, that you could just use a guest account license and just give anybody access. So aside from Tableau Public, or a very specific deal with Tableau where you kind of work with them, I know that sometimes in external use cases, there's really not an option to do it outside of core. There may be some opportunities there, but I think for the very, very much vast array of users that are using Tableau today that are on core, they will be moving over to Tableau subscription based. And it looks like somebody did answer for me. Tableau Reader is still available. So that is still out there today. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so yeah, keep the questions coming in if you have some more. Permissions. So permissions is also a tricky territory. This is definitely something that I could probably spend like a whole session going through because it can get really convoluted. Whether you use project leader or whether you use admins or whether you do lock permissions or nested permissions in different folders or manage permissions. There's so many options, and it's one of those things where it's really great that Tableau gives you the flexibility to do all these different things and use it, but it comes at the expense that it becomes kind of a nightmare sometimes to keep control of. I really like this diagram, and I'd like to use this whenever I talk about permissions because I think it does a pretty good job of covering like whether you actually would see the workbook, whether you have access or not. So check, does the capability exist outside of the site role? Meaning if I'm a explorer that can publish, do I have access to do this? Yes or no? If I'm denied by that role, then I obviously do not have any access to that, so I'm denied. Am I a admin or a project leader? If I am, and I mentioned that project leader, I can do the thing. Or if I own the content myself, so I publish something up to the server and I'm the owner, it lists me as the owner, I can also do the thing that I want to do. I can change permissions, I can publish anything like that. If I am denied as a user, so maybe my group allows me to do something, but as a specific user for Zach Geis, somebody went in and changed my permission and said, no, I can't do whatever I'm looking at, export an image, for example, then it's going to take away that access. I'm denied. Am I allowed as a user? Did somebody go in and specifically say that me as a user can do it? then it's going to say, okay, you can do it. Then it's going to check your group access, do the same thing. Can I do it or not as a group user? And then finally just say deny. So good, handy slide. I think we'll probably share this presentation. So this is a really good place if you ever get confused of like, why is it not letting me do this? Or why is it letting me do this? Go through this step by step and check, is it the role that's taking away? Is it that I don't own the content or somebody changed my individual permissions? Go through that list and check that out. We'll kind of go through some quick fire things here, some real quick stuff that's interesting to know about Tableau. So Tableau does have a mobile app. It's available for iOS and Android. It's also integrated with the BlackBerry application series if you use that at all at your work. There's a lot of different options for integrating this, and there's even a mobile stack if you wanted to, take Tableau and build it into other applications at your company. Ask data is always a nice thing. I'd like to jump over here for a moment. If you've never seen this, I bet you probably have, but I'm still going to do it anyway. So I'll go over here and I'll find some data sources. So I like this because this is one of the things that you can do. So I like this as a server admin specifically because I can ask data about the user data. So I can ask data about the metadata on my server. So if I go in and build a connection that checks in my performance or my views or my users, I can just jump in here and say, how many active users do I have in the last 30 days? Ask data will answer that. I probably should explain for those that don't know, Ask Data is a natural language generated piece of Tableau server where you can jump into a connection to a data source. It's going to automatically build up some information about that data. It's going to gather some information about it. And then I can just jump in here and actually naturally ask some questions. So count of owner row. I click on that and it's going to come in and actually open a workbook for me. This very really exciting visual that you see in front of you where it's telling me the answer is 4. But maybe instead of that, I'm more excited by the thought of this being a bar chart. I can change that there, or I can just, split this up and say, maybe instead of this, I want to see count of workbook by owner. Of course, all of this is me. That's my user ID, so it's still not too interesting. But you can imagine if you had more data, geographic, anything like that, you can jump in here and interact and do it in kind of a self-serve manner. That's what I really like about Ask Data. It's very self-service friendly. This is really good for an executive user, for example, somebody that maybe wants to just jump in and ask a quick question and get the answer. This is something that they could use to get that answer, and you can share that with them. Question out here. So can you use Tableau Mobile if your server is on-prem? Yeah, so absolutely. So regardless of where your Tableau lives, what server environment you use, you can definitely use Tableau Mobile. It's all about getting your users access to the application and making sure that they have that and that they can connect, all the things that go with that, firewall and approvals and everything that goes into just getting an app out there. But definitely, yeah, you can do that. There's a question also, any performance impacts with Ask Data in the real world? So yes, I will be completely honest. So Ask Data, especially from a server side, can be a little bit of a resource hog. It has a lot of its own services. Like there's something called Elasticsearch, which is notorious for taking a lot of your resources and increasing your Java heap stack size and things like that, which in a nutshell can just cause issues for other people downstream. As far as what it actually does, where just Ask Data, like getting its data, like looking at the data and understanding it, getting the data back and doing that analysis, I haven't really seen a lot of repercussions or anything like that. I could see definitely, because you are doing these things on the web. You would want to scale up your machine, scale up your server so that you're handling not just those people, but the users. I think kind of the general recommendation, what I've usually recommend to people and what I've heard from Tableau as well is, usually if you want to do Ask Data, it's nice to have a separate area for that. It's nice to have your production environment over here and something separate, which is your Ask Data. And that's kind of what we've done in our installation, is it's just its own self-service environment. Can you use metrics to track which data or features users like most? So there's a little bit of data in there. So one of the things I'm going to get to at some point here is there's a lot of data in what's called the Tableau Postgres repository, where you can basically like see all the stats, like the performance, the usage, and you can get very detailed. And this goes into your question, where you can actually see, like, are people hitting filters? Are people downloading data? Are they looking at the tooltips? It can be a little bit more complex to get that data because it's not just a straight query. There's some work that goes into it, but you can definitely get from Postgres the data about like user behavior and things like that. Is it possible to push ask data to a separate node? So you can definitely take the service and put it on its own node. So it can definitely, it's just like any other service, and it's actually a pretty good segue. If you look over here, we have this different these different services on here where you can see like the gateway application, search and browse, background or data engine. This one doesn't have my ask data stuff on there. I think this is probably an old image, but you would be able to kind of pick which node it's on. The problem with that is that doesn't necessarily mean that you're never going to like have system resources drain on other nodes. Tableau is notoriously kind of chatty when it comes to the different nodes, the different processes, and they can kind of take a little bit of the memory from other things that can cause issues. If one node does code down, it can cause issues for others. There's definitely some things to keep in mind with that. And I'd be happy to talk a little bit more detail really on any of these. I mentioned that at the beginning. If you have questions that I don't get to or don't answer, I don't go into sufficient detail, I'm always happy to chat. Can you demonstrate? So I think this is take the which data users like the most. So okay, ignore the question. Just like I said, so that, and I'll come to this here in a minute. You can get the data. I'll kind of talk through a little bit of how you get it. So TSM, Tableau Services Manager. This is somewhat new, 2018 version. So this is where you can actually manage Tableau Server from a user interface. I can move the different pieces and the different processes between the servers themselves. So maybe I want one machine or one server that's doing all my background work, and I want another machine that's actually rendering the views for a user. And I'm doing the cache over here, and I've got my repository that I mentioned over here. There's so many ways that you can see, and you can kind of see like instances even. Like, so not even just moving them between the nodes. How much do you want to have on that? And this is another area where I really like this. I really like the thoughts of the process topology and how you set it up in the server construction and infrastructure design. And I can talk about this for a long time, but there's some common things. Really, you're gonna use the servers as much as you can. You're typically going to keep your background processes and BigQL processes separate. One is really resource intensive on the CPU, while the other's on the memory. And there's other things that go around with this as well, like how big it is, how many processes you have running at any time. Do you need it to be redundant and highly available? It's getting really in the weeds, but you can go very deep into the process topology here. I think I do have a slide about that as well. So server add-ons, I'll just touch on these very quickly. So server as a base product, just like Tableau Desktop, you can have just the general software on a Tableau server environment. You can also expand and go into the two different add-ons we have. So the first one that we have is server management. So server management add-on comes with two pieces. You're going to have the monitoring tool over on the left side. This shows me a lot of built-in capacity analytics and things like that, how many concurrent users I have, load times, background tasks. And on the right side, we have the content migration tool. So if you have kind of an SDLC that's very typical, where you're going from like dev to UAT to prod, you might want this so you can deploy through that process and have like an actual separation of duty, so that certain people do the deployments and certain people do the work themselves. The other add-on that we have over here is we have the data management add-on. So we have the catalog, Tableau catalog on the left side. This is really all about lineage. This is seeing like what is your data connected to? What happens if this breaks? Is this controlled? You know, what are these connected to? Comes with a whole lot of information and data that comes with this, where you can see it directly in the user interface of Tableau Server. The other side of that is Tableau Prep Conductor, so that you can take your Tableau prep flows and run them on a schedule and get them going. We have another question. So within my company, we have access to our site's metadata so we can create internal team dashboards to show users stats. So actually is really more just a point to clarify. So so Claire mentioned they do kind of the same thing. They have access to the site's metadata. They create internal team dashboards to show usage stats for the site, who's logged in, who's never logged in, which workers haven't been viewed. It's really helpful. And yeah, it really is. There's so much data there. It's actually, I spoke about this at the Tableau conference, and I showed a whole portal of data and information that we built at Chase 2 years ago. So if you look up JP Morgan Tableau Server 2018, something like that, you should be able to find that on YouTube. The status screens. So this is in that same vein of you want to know what's happening on the Tableau server. All of these are available, so you can see the traffic to views, the actions by specific users, background tasks, space usage, all those kind of things. And here's just 2 examples. So this is the extract screen where I can see which extracts are running, which ones are failing, how long they're running, how long they take, and which ones, you know, is my distribution of failures to success good or bad or getting worse. And then here's traffic to view, so I can see over time how many people are using that. And again, I've mentioned this a couple of times, there is a Postgres repository, and this allows you to go beyond those built-in screens where you can get the data yourself. You can build your own reports. You can find a lot more, like the user behavior information that we were talking about just a little bit ago, or other things like, you know, you can see all the historical events, like if anything was ever deleted, who it was by, who published something, who changed permissions, if you wanted to audit things, things like that. There's a lot of things you can see in the data that is available in there, not necessarily available in one of those on-demand screens. So really easy to activate. All you're going to do is run a simple command as an admin to activate this access to this database, connect to it just like this. You can kind of see an example here, and then publish the dashboards up, and you can put them on a schedule just like anything else. So really useful. And you can take this down. It's something that I spoke about in that session that I mentioned, where you can make this data available to different teams. So, you know, we have an example where we have all of the teams have one dashboard, and we use user filtering so they can see their content. Getting a little bit more into the complex area, and I know we're running a little low on time. So there is 2 different ways that Tableau renders. I like to put this in here just because it's new information for a lot of people, and it's also useful information. So Tableau has a tendency to, it doesn't always render things the same. And you may have noticed this before. And a lot of times the crux of that is actually that it's either rendering from the server. The server itself is like visualizing the data and populating it on your browser for you, or it's rendering by your local machine, your laptop, or your machine, or your PC, and that's what's rendering. So it depends on the complexity of the view. It depends on server settings, but you can't always test this. So if you ever see an example where like something renders weird, it just looks off, and it just doesn't seem like what you're expecting, and some days it looks better, sometimes it doesn't. You know, if you just add this little parameter to your URL, which is render false or render true, you can actually force it to do one over the other, just so you get a sense of like which one looks which way. There's a lot of open source tools for Tableau Server that allow you to extend and monitor and understand utilization, things like that. I'll go through these quickly. So LogShark allows you as an admin to process the logs that come out of Tableau Server. This is really useful if you have failures that are recurring a lot in your Tableau Server environment, and you want to analyze them and understand more data about what's happening, or if you want to see very true, accurate performance. So performance can be grabbed from the built-in views. It can be taken from the admin views, but it is not actually 100% there. It's very close, but it's not quite there. So if you want very precise data, the logs are the only place you're going to get those timestamps, and it's going to be exactly what you're expecting. TabJoel This allows you to take one machine and simulate load against another. So say that I am building a new server farm and I wanted to move over to there, but I wanted to test it out first. I can actually replicate users and impersonate them and send a bunch of fake users to that server, check how the performance goes on the dashboards, and analyze it and refine the server before I decide that I want to move everybody over there, just so I'm not going in blind and I know what I'm expecting. Tab Mine, this allows you to see information about more kind of Windows side things, a little bit more about performance and CPU utilization, things like that. Scout is a very specific use case for, testing of one dashboard, looking at 2 different servers and seeing kind of how it looks, whether it looks the same, whether it runs the same, whether the performance is the same, things like that. This is kind of important to me. As I mentioned, I am a data dev Tableau ambassador. And that means that I'm very built into the Tableau developer program. I'm very fond of this program. And I mentioned that I tell you how to get your own site. So Tableau developer program, there's a lot of really good things for it. I'll actually have the link at the end. But if you just search Tableau developer program, it's going to bring you to a page like this. And there's a lot of really cool things about it. Number one, you get a newsletter that tells you all the things that are happening about Tableau data dev, like what's coming out with the new APIs, the server updates, other things like that. It comes with, inclusion in a community that's very like-minded and likes these things. You get special sessions where they talk about the new features and things like that. And like I said, you get your own playground environment. All you got to do is register this, and it gives you a URL. And then just like I did earlier in this presentation, you have your own sandbox in Tableau Online where you can jump in, see the newest version, publish and test, play with the APIs, whatever you want to do, without worrying about paying for it or anything like that. It's there's really no reason not to sign up for it, and I always encourage everybody to do that. Speaking of extending Tableau, there's a lot you can do with the APIs. I mentioned this before that I've worked with these a lot. I could definitely do a session on this. I've done many sessions about the specific APIs, but we'll talk about them very quickly. So JavaScript API is all about embedding, taking Tableau and putting it inside of another application, allowing two-way communication, allowing things to happen within a website or a web application. REST API is when you want to do things programmatically, like you want to publish things or delete things, or create a project. Whenever somebody clicks a button on a page, you can do things like that. The Extensions API allows you to build custom applications which sit inside of Tableau, where it can access the data and do things like that. You've probably seen examples of natural language things. You've seen write-back, probably other really cool things that have been done with the extensions. A new one is the analytics extension. So this allows you to connect to new connective languages. So it used to just be Python and R, but there's a lot of other languages you can do, like Pascal and other things like that. Extract and hyper ways that you can interact and create and programmatically modify and update data sources. Web data connectors allow you to connect to things that are available on the web that maybe don't have a direct connection, like JSON data or something that's available on a REST endpoint. And the metadata API allows you to look at lineage. You can jump on there and see what is this workbook connected to, and who published that, and do all these things within Tableau without ever leaving that API kind of interface that you have within Tableau server. And we're definitely getting low on time. I think I've got a few more minutes here. So server architecture, this is just a very high level thing. We talk about, you have the gateway that's sitting up front. You have the user tier, which is the things that the user's doing, whether they're interacting with data or ask data or an actual workbook, whether they're interacting with the metadata. The management tier is where a lot of the actual work that's going into those actions is happening, where it's actually performing a connection, or it's telling which worker to do which thing. And then storage is where you actually have data sit. You have the repository, which I talked about, the metadata, or sorry, the Postgres repository, and then the file store, which is where files sit on the server itself. I've kind of talked about process topology. This one does actually have the ask data. So there's ask data, which on this one is enabled on all 3 nodes. Elasticsearch, which kind of works with that as well. But there's a lot going on here. This is where you can kind of play around with moving things around, adding nodes, moving the processes to see what gives your users the best experience. Tableau can be built to be highly available. which means that rather than it just being a server that if something happens, it goes down, you can actually build up with an external load balancer. You can have a active passive setup where you have some servers running hot all the time, where others are sitting on standby, so that if the active falls or fails, the passive comes in and slips over and takes over. There's a lot of options in how you can build this up, but this is just kind of one example of that. And then finally, the last slide I've got here is new things. So I kind of put the last 2 major years, so 2019 to 2020. Some of the big things that I mentioned or I haven't mentioned, Ask Data came out. We had Tableau Prep Conductor in 2019.1. They completely gave it Tableau Server a new user interface in .2. .3 came out with the add-ons that I mentioned. 2019.4 came out with webhook support, where you can build a process to come through and connect different process pipelines into, if something happens on the server, chain it into Slack, for example, and have it do something over there. And then we move into this year where we've had, pretty good set of things. We've had visit animations where everything runs, and actually moves on the page. Finally had the play button in the browser. TabPy officially came out. Login-based license management, where they're moving the activation and ownership of licenses to the servers. You just talked about metrics. There's new admin reviews. There's grant license, share with me, other things like that. So there's a lot of cool things that have come out recently. If you haven't used Tableau in a while. And then finally, the useful links. I mentioned Tableau Blueprint a couple of times. I mentioned the Data Dev program a couple of times. Tableau GitHub is also a good link if you want to see some of the cool things that they built and they made available out there for your use. And I'll stop there. I'll leave it. So we do have one question. Any word on 2020.4? I haven't heard anything personally. I don't know if anybody else on the line has heard anything. I actually just came back from vacation for 2 weeks, so I'm a little behind on all the latest happenings. I don't know, Sean, if you know.
I know that I don't know if it actually came out or not. I know that I've heard some unofficial rumblings of things, but I don't know if it's actually been released yet. The 2020.4 beta hasn't been released yet. So.
Yeah, I would expect, we're moving into November soon, so yeah. I would expect it's got to be pretty close on the horizon.
Yeah. I would expect it to be pretty close on the horizon, and it won't be long. It will not be in beta very long, I would assume.
So Sean, do we have any time for questions, or do we want to move on to you?
I just heard Jeff James says that 2020.4 beta is out now. So if you want to go check out the new beta program, it's at prereleases.tableau.com. You can check it out, and it's good to go. So go check it out. Any other questions for Zach? Awesome. Thank you, Zach.
All right. Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, everybody. And like I said, if you have any questions for me afterwards, just reach out anytime. And thanks again.
Very good. All right. Let's get back to it here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Just a second here. All right. All right. So that was a really awesome flyby of everything that goes on in server. Now what I'm going to get into is how to make sure your dashboards are performing. As I mentioned, I'm sure most of you have probably come into contact with a workbook or two that isn't really performing as well as you would like it to. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about why Tableau acts the way that it does. We're going to get into actually show you some performance recordings, and I'm going to show you a couple of interesting ways that I use Tableau to kind of get to know my data. And whenever I'm in that design discovery phase, figuring out what dimensions or what pitfalls I might need to think about as it relates to that. So get to know that. And then lastly, we'll finish up with just some general overall tips for efficient dashboard design. I do want to caveat this. In my environment, at Cerner, we do everything with live connections to the database or to Tableau server. So it's a Tableau connected data source or a direct connection. Basically what I'm saying is, for us, extracts are a last resort. So I know that may raise some eyebrows for you, but for some people, but that's just the way that we've done things. So if you can get it running really fast live, there's no reason for an extract. So that's the way that we operate. So that's what this session is going to be designed to talk about, to think about, those types of things. All right. So also want to mention real quick, as you can probably hear, I am suffering from a cold. I will try to minimize the amount of nosy slurps, but you know, hey, it's 2020, right? All right. So here's what we need to know. Your dashboard is only going to be as fast as your database. Generally, if you're running a live connection and your dashboard is slow, generally that means your database is slow. There are some ways that you can use Tableau to design better worksheets and better dashboards to do things. Tableau does a really great job of optimizing queries the best that it can. But just like any other program, it will do exactly what it will tell you to do, regardless of whether or not that's best practice. So just keep that in mind. So having said that, if it takes your query 10 seconds to return in SQL Studio or Squirrel or any other program like that, do not expect your Tableau dashboard to render in 2 seconds. So just kind of keep those things in mind. Again, lots of really cool things that Tableau can do. There are new functionalities that are coming out. Relationships and data models, noodles are certainly going to help kind of move those things quicker. But again, if you're live connected, it's only going to be as fast as your database. So what I'd like to do now is jump into Tableau and actually show you a poorly designed dashboard. And again, some of those things that you can actually do to figure out where you need to rethink your dashboard, and also how to actually perform a Tableau recording of your dashboard. So let's jump into that. All right, so here I am in Tableau. I am connected to a server. What I'm going to do is, if you have the ability to open Tableau Desktop, you have the ability to run a performance recording. Doesn't take any special user rights or anything like that. So we're going to go to Help on the menu. We're going to go to Help, Settings and Performance. You've got a bunch of options here, but the very last one is the one that we're concerned about: Start Performance Recording. Now, as soon as I click that, Tableau is now recording every single thing that I do in Tableau. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this workbook right here. Now, this is dummy data, but it is a real dashboard that I did have to work on. So right now, you've probably seen this dialog box before. Right now, you can see it's giving you a little bit of indication of what it's doing as it kind of renders this dashboard. It's gathering field values. And again, I wanted to use this example to show you real world. This is not, I didn't want to try and dummy it up with Superstore, but because we don't live with Superstore data sets. So this is going to take a little while to do, but as you can imagine, we're up to 45 seconds right now. If I were to put this in front of a stakeholder, a client, there's absolutely no way that this would fly. They would tell me to get out and just give me their data in Excel and let them do what they want. And that's not what we want. We want them to use our dashboard because we spent so much time on it. So what's happening right now, I'm not connected directly to the database. I'm connected to a Tableau data source, which is basically just an XML mapping of the database connection. But it is running queries against our database. So what's happening now is Tableau's running a bunch of these queries. As you can see, I'm starting to get some views now, and it is not only is the performance recording showing me how long the query takes, but if you're connected directly to the database, it will actually render the underlying SQL that it actually ran. This can be useful to just kind of get an understanding of how you've set up your dashboards, how you've set up your worksheets to do those kinds of things. So we're getting a little bit closer now. We're up to 2 minutes. Again, can you imagine putting this in front of somebody? That's right. I hope no one is building a dashboard like this. Yes. So that took a little over 2 minutes. So now that it's rendered, it's here. I'm going to go ahead and stop my performance recording. I'm going to settings of performance. I do the exact same thing. Stop. Again, I don't do anything else. I just wait, and Tableau's automatically going to open up a new workbook in Tableau that's going to be the results of the recording. So while that's loading here, John asked a question, does the recording feature itself slow down the rendering, or is it pretty much a non-factor in the time? It is a non-factor. It is happening in the background. All it is doing is simply just taking measurements of what's happening. Okay, so here we are. This is the performance recording workbook. This is the default. It's good as it is. It's colored by the different events. So it parsed the XML, it opened the workbook, it connected to a data source, it opened a worksheet, executed queries, a bunch of different stuff. There's one thing that I like to do. I'm going to use this sheet as a filter. So I'm going to do that. So these are in seconds how long queries took to get in here, to actually render and come back to Tableau. So you can see this very top one took 36, almost 37 seconds. And if I click on that, what's going to happen up here, it's going to filter to, I can see that it's on my appointments dashboard, on my appointments type worksheet. That's really key. Again, if I were connected to the database directly, right down here, it would actually show you what that SQL statement is. But because I'm connected to a Tableau data source, it just spits out XML, which means nothing. So what I like to do, I like to use this to show me, okay, what are my queries that are performing really high, and where are those? So it says here, appointment dashboard, appointments type worksheet. So let's go back into my workbook, and I see my appointment types worksheet right here is highlighted down there. Let's go into that and let's see if there's something we can figure out. Okay, so we've got a stacked bar chart with about 8 different elements on it. And as you can see by my little scroll bar icon, I can see that it's really small. Within Tableau Desktop, if you're not using your status bar, which is in the bottom left-hand corner, it's really, really powerful. So for those who may not be able to see that, it is right down here. I will try to zoom in. I hope that's zooming in for you. It's zooming in for me. But you can see I've got 483,000 rows in this worksheet. So Tableau had to go run a query to pull back 483,000 rows. But it's not just 43,000 rows, it's 608,000 marks. So if you're new to Tableau, what's the difference between a row and a mark? Essentially what you can think about marks is the additional layers, additional levels of detail that you've put on your dashboard. So as I mentioned, we have about 8 different stack bars here. So basically, a row of data can have between 1 and 8 different marks on it. So that 600,000 number is the total number of appointment types for each row, which is pretty crazy. So having to return 483,000 rows of anything is going to be a lot. So that's what I know. I need to do some drilling in to this worksheet, into this worksheet to see if there's anything I can do. Now, one thing that I like to do is, first thing I like to do is I like to do a distribution. So let's just see the distribution of my measure that I'm interested in across this this dimension, and that's reason display. So the way that you need to do that is you create a bin, but because my measure is already aggregated, I can't just do a regular bin. I need to create a deaggregated measure in order to create a histogram. So I'm going to do that with a calculated field. I'm going to do that with a, this is just called reason bin. So this is, I'm going to fix this on my reason display. And I'm just going to do sum of my volume, which is volume summary. And it doesn't want me to aggregate this because it's already aggregated. I click OK. That gives me a new dimension, which is not aggregate now. And that allows me to create bins, right? So if I go over here to volume summary and try to create, you can see I don't have bins. And that's because that value, this value has already been aggregated. And for a distribution, we need non-aggregate measures. So now that I create a bin, Tableau thinks, let's do that again. There we go. Yep, that's what I want you to do. Bin of 1 is fine. It's going to create a new dimension. I do that. Runs the query. Again, it has to do this for all 483,000, remember? And then what I'm going to do is basically going to do a count distinct. What this is going to show me on my x-axis here is it's going to show me the individual values within my range of volume summary. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a count distinct of my individual reason displays to show me what I'm looking for. Basically, what it's going to show me is how many individual reasons do I have across all my individual volume summaries. All right, so since I know exactly what I'm going to build, I don't want you to, and then sometimes it gets hung up there. This is the problem. This is the risk you take with demoing live, right? All right, looks like I'm gonna have to force quit this. Looks like I asked Tableau to do too much today. That's okay. But basically, what would have happened if I would have been able to get this to render is basically you would see that an overwhelming majority, like more than 90% of all of my individual reason displays have a value of have a volume or revenue of $1, right? So it's, again, statistically insignificant. This is when you can start to think about, okay, do I actually need to show that on a dashboard? Probably not. It's such a granular layer of the data that I'm not going to gain any insight. It's probably there more for context than anything else, which is fine. But I don't necessarily need to be displaying it on a dashboard. Now, as I started working through this problem in my real world, what I figured out was this is a dashboard that we take to a lot of different clients. And so reason display is a normalized database column across multiple clients. It just so happens that this client, their reason displays in their database is a free text field. So there's no normalization of the values that can be entered, right? So anybody can just put whatever they want into that field, and that becomes a row in the database. At other clients that we saw, that was a more normalized dimension, right? So I didn't have 483,000 unique values at other clients. So that kind of gets into a little bit into my world where I'm creating this dashboard, sending it out to clients who have the same database structure, but within the database structure, you can have lots of different variation. So this is something that we work through a lot. Works really great in one client, but it doesn't work so much in another. That's why. So we kind of had to redesign this particular dashboard for that particular client because of the different things. The other thing that I like to do with when I'm in here and I'm kind of doing this discovery thing is I like to do a Pareto chart. Pareto chart just basically shows the, if you've ever heard of the 80-20 rule, 80% of all sales come from the top 20% of all of your products. It's a very loose way of describing it, but that's essentially what the Pareto principle is. So you could actually build that in Tableau across any dimension that you choose to do that. And so what I was going to show you within this example, but it's not working. So what you would have seen is that 80% of the volume for this workbook here, 80% of the volume came from 0.5% of our top reason displays, right? So again, 99.5% of all of the other reason displays are statistically insignificant. So again, those are just the types of things that I like to do when I'm discovering what's in my data to kind of think through here. So we're going to go ahead and get out of this because this is not working. But that's just a couple things to kind of think about as you're building some of this stuff. So let's go back into our PowerPoint here and talk about some other tips. Again, please keep in mind that every single object, when I say object, I mean worksheet. I also mean quick filter. I also mean legend. All of those things are separate queries to the database. So when you create so on that dashboard where I had 5 different filters up at the top, I had a color legend, and then I had those 4 different worksheets. That's what 5, 6 plus 4 is 10. That's 10 separate queries to the database just to make that one dashboard. So one thing that I like to tell people who come in and ask me for help is, all of these queries are only 2-second queries. Okay, cool. But you've got 100 sheets on your dashboard. 100 queries, 100 2-second queries is still going to add up, even if they're running in parallel. So just keep in mind the more complex that you're making your dashboard, your worksheets, the more Tableau is going to have to work. And when you add in cross data source filtering, blending, all of those types of things, it's just going to compound the complexity that much more. What I like to say also is take as much pre-processing of row level non-aggregate calculations up to the database as possible, meaning become friends, best friends with your DBAs. Things, a good example is maybe I have in my data source, I have a field called state, and what it actually is the state abbreviation. But maybe in a tooltip, I want to actually have the state name, the state full name. So what do you do? There is no function. There is no state name function. So what do? You write a giant case statement, a 50-line case statement, where MO then Missouri. Else if Kansas, KS, then Kansas, right? And you just duplicate that, right? Well, every single time that you do something with that calculated field in your worksheet, and you load the worksheet, you do a filter action on that worksheet, Tableau has to recalculate that case statement every single time you do something. So just think about all those case statements, and those are row level non-aggregate case statements, right? They're not going to change. So just keep that in mind. How many of those are you doing in your dashboard? All of those can be taken up to the database. If you have a nice, kind DBA, they'll be able to put that into your table. Also, think about if you have a dimension in a worksheet on a dashboard, you need to have some really crucial conversations with your stakeholder to justify why they need a drop down list of the same dimension, right? If you have a map showing all 50 states, you do not also need a drop down filter for state. Again, we're talking best case crystal ball. So I'm just going to state that right now. And I'm not saying you're going to be able to win every single conversation that you have, but if you have a dimension on your worksheet, use a filter action to do the same thing. Now, why is that? Well, because Tableau has to, that's two separate queries that Tableau has to run. It has to run a query for the map, and then it also has to run a separate query to just return the filters. So just think about those things as you're going through things. Let's talk about filters. Filters are good. People love filters. I love filters. Who doesn't love filters? But again, think about whether or not you need them. Think about if there's ways that you can manipulate a drop-down filter on your dashboard. Also, if you do need to have drop-down filters, please watch your relevant values. I know everybody loves them, and everybody probably wishes it was selected by default. But remember, when we go back to the Tableau workbook performance, Tableau is going to run as many queries as it can in parallel. Meaning, it's going to run, if you have 5 filters, Tableau is going to try and run all 5 queries to return your drop-down filters at the same time. But the moment that you check relevant values only, Tableau can no longer run those parallel. It has to wait until it gets all of the results from there, and then it sticks those values into a where clause to get the next dimension, and then the next dimension, and the next dimension. So when you have 5 filters on your dashboard, Tableau has to run each one separately until it gets all of the results together. So you can see a really big performance increase or decrease, depending on your which way you're facing, you can see a really good decrease in query time by just unselecting relevant values, because Tableau can run all of those in parallel. Now, let's also think about cardinality, right? If my Tableau workbook would have been working, you would have also seen that my reason filter, my reason display filter was also a dropdown. So not only did it have to render a worksheet with 483,000 rows, but then it also had to do the exact same query just to return a dropdown list. Nobody is ever going to want to sift and scroll through 483,000 records on a filter scroll bar, right? So use the custom value list. Use the wildcard match as well. Those are two really powerful things that you can use. I really like the custom value list because you can actually copy and paste a list from Excel into a custom value list, and it'll actually do that, which I think has been shared on one of the many speed tipping things. So look for that. You know, just think of those things for filters. Watch filters. Filters will probably they'll crush your dashboard just as quicker than you can think about it. All right. So other tips. You know, Tableau can do some really amazing things with really large data sets in the tens of millions of rows really, really quickly if it's set up correctly and you're asking it to do the right thing. Speaking of which, people love level of detail calculations. I do. I'm not gonna, you know, blow smoke up your tail. I love level of detail calculations, but I do use them very sparingly, and I want to make sure, and I'm very intentional about the level of details that I put in there, especially when you get into like nested level of details. Essentially, a level of detail calculation in SQL terms is a subquery. So you can imagine if you've got a 3-level nested fixed level of detail, you can imagine the nasty SQL that is generated when doing that. So just keep that in mind. Figure out ways to kind of think of some creative ways to kind of get out of relying on level of detail expressions so much. Those types of things, and then calculations. This is the last thing I like to talk about. This is somebody recently wrote a blog post about Boolean calculations. Boolean is the fastest in processing time in Tableau and just in general in SQL as well. We would, if you can use Booleans, that is the fastest you could use. After that, sum, min, and max are going to be the next fastest. Counts and averages will be below that. And then probably one of the slowest aggregations is count distincts. And that's should not be surprising because it has to kind of keep in mind all of the different variables. So count Ds tend to be really, really slow. So just keep those in mind and enjoy doing that. All right. So next thing that I want to talk about is this is a really great workflow. It's out on the Interworks website. You can type in the bit.ly link and it will take you right to it. It does require you to enter your email address for Interworks stuff, but the junk button is in your email is something that you could probably use to get rid of whatever they try and tell you. But the reward from doing that is you get this really, really excellent flow chart about performance optimization, from server and data sources flow chart to a workbook design flow chart to a calculations flow chart. Like I said, I'm not going to try and take credit for this. Robert Rouse, former Tableau Zen master at Interworks, created this flowchart. Really, really great. Definitely want you to go check it out if you want to do that. So hopefully throughout this presentation, you've got a little bit better understanding of what goes into an efficiently designed dashboard and how to optimize your workbook performance that you are working with. So I'll take a look at questions. Let's see, is it effective to also make a table for state abbreviations and state names and join? You can, yeah, you can join, but again, Tableau is going to have to do that join. Either it's going to do it, it's still going to have to do the join, which means it's still going to be SQL. So you can do that. Just know that it's going to be a join. If you can insert that as a column into your final table, that's probably going to be your best thing. In the case statement example, people really like that. That's great. If you cannot add to your data source, would it be better to blend a static file for the abbreviation name? Yeah, absolutely. This is, and again, I could do a whole presentation on the difference on when to blend and when not to, and when to use joins and that kind of thing. But just remember this: joins are you're joining your data before aggregation. A blend is essentially a join after aggregation. So that's why sometimes when you get into a situation where you've got, if you've ever had the awful error calculated field when blending that says cannot compute aggregated measures, you're probably doing a count distinct or something like that, where Tableau doesn't have anything to do that blend or join on. So yeah, but if you have those non-aggregate row level calculations, a blend would be a really good option in that case, if you can't get into the database. Yes. So let's see. So I had another question. If our database was dedicated to Tableau, yes. So at Cerner, we use Vertica, which is an analytic database, and it is solely used for analytic purposes, both not only in Tableau, but we also have business objects, SAP business objects for those, for those traditional legacy reporting needs. So it is set up exactly. It is set up for analysis in Tableau. So we're not trying to do other things with our database. It's strictly for analytics. So we probably have a lot more flexibility in that space just because of the way that we've set up our environment. But that's that. So great questions coming in. If you have any more, please go ahead and type those in. But we're going to go ahead and get moving on so that we can get you guys out of here. So last couple things, we're going to wrap up here pretty quickly. Did you know the KC Tug is on Slack? Yes, we are. We've got several users out there. It hasn't been very active, but we are wanting to get that out, wanting to get that active. So tomorrow, since this is being recorded and put out onto the interwebs, I'm not going to put the invitation link in this presentation deck for you to type into your keyboard. I'm going to send you an email and we will basically allow you to sign up to join our Slack channel. So if you're unfamiliar with Slack, Slack is basically it's it's a web application, desktop application. Groups of people can get together. It's kind of like similar to a Tableau forums type of scenario, but basically it's just a way for us to kind of get together, connect, share ideas, and share really cool tips and tricks, blog posts, whatever it is, whatever you want to talk about. We definitely want to hear from you. So check that out tomorrow. Sign up for it and come say hi and come get engaged. Next thing is definitely want to check out the Tableau community events page. That is where all Tableau user groups are being kind of organized, and anybody can sign up for any. I think we had somebody from Memphis on here today, so thank you for joining and do that. So again, thinking about those industries that I mentioned in the Tableau conference video part, they have specific industry focused user groups, so you can check that out as well. Lots of really great events to check out. So go check that out as well. And then lastly, I like to finish with this last slide. This is Your Tug, Kansas City. This is Aaron, me, Lucas, and Jay. We just organize it and run it, but this is Your Tug. We want to give you presentations and topics that you want to hear about, that you want to learn more about. The four of us, we've got a pretty wide net. So if there's something that you want to learn more about, hear something about, learn more about, please do not hesitate to reach out. It's what we do. Or if you want to present, we would love to have members of our community join our user group and share some of the cool stuff that they're doing, or something you've learned, or something you just want to show off. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you want to do that as well. Like I said, the committee meets monthly to plan future calls. So we do that. How many had another question come in? How many are online today? I saw it as high as 90, 95-ish, whenever Zach was doing his presentation. And then it kind of dropped off when I was doing mine. I expect that. But yeah, so our entire community is about 500-ish. We invite about 500 people, and we do that. So lastly, the link to Slack will be sent in an email to everybody tomorrow. I'm not going to put the link in on this slide deck, because I don't want people to watch this later who don't really have any business being in our group. So look for that tomorrow. All right, Jay, Aaron, Lucas, Zach, any parting thoughts?
No, thanks again. Appreciate the invite. Hope everybody has a good day.
You bet. Cool. All right. With that, go forth and viz efficiently. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time.